Hi again, guys. This is Alexandra Allred. I am an adjunct professor at Tarleton State University, and we've got a really exciting guest today. For those who are just joining in and you're not part of the course, this is an alternative design for fitness in all things kinesiology. And one of the things that we've really focused on now is branding. And everyone loves the idea of being a social influencer, finding their own brand, which is all very exciting, except for there are critical errors that can be made. And so this really, we brought Laura here today, and she isn't, let me just tell you who she is. So Laura Bull is what a career. And in fact, I'm going to let you tell us how you started, but just she has worked with some of the biggest names you can imagine and wrote a book. We're going to make sure that we've got that so you can see what the cover looks like. And take it away, Laura. I guess, how did you get into the career field that you got in? And tell us a little bit about your job title.
I fell into it, which is funny. I guess a lot of people do. I knew I wanted to work in the music industry, but I didn't know why, right? And I always joke that I've been doing personal branding since the 90s. But I was, all state choir. I did all the things music wise growing up. And then, so that led me to Belmont University in Nashville. There, at the time, they were the only I think there was only two colleges in the country, maybe the world, that offered a business degree around music business. So I knew I wanted the business side of things, the management, the record label. And then I started interning at Sony before I was allowed to via the school. So I just did it on my own. And then that led to working my way up to be responsible for all the artist development and marketing at Sony Nashville. So I was there for 10 years. So I did the corporate ladder thing. And then when I left, I became an adjunct professor and I started my own consulting. And I realized there was a lot of disconnects in the marketplace, especially around creative entrepreneurs. And it was right as influencer marketing started to take off. So I had this idea for a book. I didn't know how to write a book, so I went back to get a master's degree in creative writing. I went to SMU while I was teaching at SMU, in the consumer behavior side and the Timberland Advertising Institute. So, anyways, the book is not, I mean, it started out to be a music industry book, but it's now, as you know, it's really applies to everybody. And so it's very pop culture heavy. But it's just basically it's for anybody who is the public face of their business that they're growing. So, anyways, and so, now I don't teach anymore. I do it this way. This is how I teach. So that's basic. And I run my agency. So that's what I do. And that's how I fell into it.
And again, for those of you who are not connected with Tarleton and you're just checking this out, or you know Laura personally, or you've heard about or read her book, that's how I met her. I actually stumbled onto this book that is not about sports and or the sporting industry. And the opening, when you talk about your proposed commercial, how you would have
Yeah.
branded Beyonce,
Yeah.
I was hooked. I mean, it's such a great example. But I hope for you guys listening, whether you're in the music or the sports or whatever, as Laura just said, she did all the things that she loved about music. So I might be talking to someone who wants sports marketing. You did all the things, but you reach a point, and I hope you heard that she said she took the initiative. There wasn't even internships there, but she took the initiative
Did it.
anyway. But also, I love that you sought out the school that you needed to go to that was specific. It was very specific to
Right.
what you wanted to do.
Yeah, that was
So
important.
that's a great lead into my next question about learning to laser focus in on how you're supposed to do this. You've watched now how has branding and social influencing changed? Because it feels like, yeah, it feels like the rules are probably a little different now.
It's not so much the rules. I think the issue is now that it's mass, right? The technology has changed. The consumer behavior has changed. Like I said, I've been doing it since the 90s, giving you my age. But every consumable aspect has changed. So where, I point out in the book, an influencer is anybody who can rally an audience around their viewpoint, right? So that could be anybody. They do not have to be on social media. Aristotle was an influencer, right? Still is.
Yeah.
Thousands of years later,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
There was no
Brilliant.
social media. George Clooney, right? If we want to use somebody more recent, he doesn't have social media at all, but yet he's literally out there changing the world with what he's trying to influence. So, the base premise that you need to build a business around the brand has not changed. You have to build something around it that, and really the mode of communication, the method of communication for a lot of people now is social media, but that's not how to build the only way to build a business, right? You have to have it offline as well as online. So, and some people, I get this question a lot. Some people are like, well, I'm really bad at social media and it's just not my thing. Like, or a specific social media platform. Like, I can't get into TikTok or Facebook isn't my jam or whatever that may be. If it's not, one of my things is that if it's not natural to what the brand says, like you have to look at the brand particulars before you decide where to communicate that brand and where your audience is. So if it doesn't make sense for you, it may not make sense for the brand, right? So it has changed in so many ways.
You got me thinking on that one. So, for example, let's say that I'm a lot older. I'm doing something that's going to go to an older age. It would make sense for me to go to Facebook rather than TikTok.
Correct. Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I
knowing,
mean, baseline, right? Without, there's
right,
so many
right, right,
other
right.
factors that come in. And I always explain it as like, if I'm a marketing person, I'm going to want all the impressions everywhere, right? But if I'm a branding person, I'm going to be more strategic with what makes sense for my brand. Because if I go into the wrong arena, just like that Beyonce commercial example, right? If it doesn't make
Which
sense.
was great. I would love to see that, but go on.
I know, I know. I'll tell you a funny story about that, but yeah, if it's the wrong arena, it will actually impact the brand negatively, and so you have to protect it in certain places too. But the funny thing about that commercial, I was teaching a music business class, and of course, no music business classes have branding as part of the topic, which for me, coming from a record label background too, it's just like, well, how? Like, it's just crazy to me, which again is why I wrote the book. But it actually came when I first said the example, like Home Depot partnering with Beyonce, like that would not make sense and it would hurt her brand. But then as I was in front of my class talking about it, I was like, actually, there is a connect here, and here's the messaging through line, and this is why it would work. So imagine this commercial. And it was like a real time, like, aha, like actually it would work if you did it correctly, and this is why. But if you didn't have that through line, then it wouldn't work, right?
Right,
And then
right,
say no to the millions, because it'll cost you 100 million later,
right. Okay, so this is, I'm going to go sports specific here,
Go for it.
in just for my class. So a lot of my students are tomorrow's leaders in anything from physical therapy, occupational therapy, to wanting to be an NBA coach, NFL coach,
Love it.
to wanting to hawk sports equipment. Right. What are some of the, and I'm going to go backwards. I want to know what are some of the biggest mistakes that people make in trying to figure out their brand? And then maybe you could even say, how I have so many students that go, I don't know. I just know that I want to do this. How do you kind
Love
of
that.
pin down? Yeah.
So, okay, so I also talk about this. There's two things there. So, I also talk about this in the book, the difference between a passion and a purpose, right? A passion, you need both. I'm not saying you
Right.
don't need one or the other. Both are great, but it's just, and I use my examples from the music industry. So, but this will resonate. If if I'm a record label and I'm looking to sign somebody, right? I'm not looking that they enjoy singing and that they really have a passion for it, because that's everybody that comes through my door is
Right.
passionate about that, right? But if they have a purpose behind it and a brand built out behind it, then I'm going to sign them, right? You can totally tell a difference. The people that mess up are the ones that, especially early on, think about what they like, what they like for instance, I get a lot of people that are like, I love the color blue, so let's make my logo blue, right? There's psychology behind colors. There's psychology behind consumer behavior and how they're going to react to something. Fonts, colors, visual elements. There's MIT studies that show that people make nanosecond decisions based off of first visual impression on something, right? A solid brand is really making sure that that visual and the narrative, the personality, the lifestyle, the all those things, and then the product, whatever the product and the service is, all of those things have to be copacetic and cohesive. That is the it factor, right? That is when you see a guest on the Tonight Show couch and you can, in 3 minutes, wow, that's interesting. I want to look, I need to research that person, or I've never heard of this person before. I need to know more about them. They sound fascinating, or something that's making me connect with them. That's because their brand is so consistent throughout that entire package. Um, so yeah, I think that the biggest thing that people mistake is just, I know my brand, right? And it's about them instead of, okay, you got to look out and you've got to build this like a business. What, how are you being perceived? What are you building around you visually, narratively, even what you're providing, right? Um, and how is that going to hit a target demographic that you want to hit?
What I love is the title of, okay, so the title of her book, and again, we're going to show it for you, but is From Individual to Empire is a big deal, right? And I think you kind of hit on, I think especially young adults get so focused on that they've seen how big the followers that they get. And so that kind of goes along and with that part. Um, in my class, I give examples of athletes again, but who went for the shock value
Hmm.
to get followers, or in a couple other cases, they really misrepresent the truth
Hmm.
about their skills, their ability, their training. It's obvious, right? What could go wrong? But I want to ask you, in terms of what can go wrong for you if your focus is, you know what, I'm going to do the shock, I'll get a bunch of followers, then I'll be able to keep them with me and I'm going to go on my journey and keep these people. How
Yeah.
can that, and you can use the industry that, you love most music, but how can that strategy backfire?
Well, and it's really across the board for sure. It does backfire. Shock value, you have to, okay. Doing that is more of a marketing tactic. It's not a branding tactic, right? So it's very important to distinguish the fact that branding is what you want to say for the next 20 years. Marketing is what you want to say for the next 20 days. Okay. Marketing
Love
comes and
it.
goes. Marketing changes. That's where trends come in and what, other people are doing comes in. That's messaging can change there, right? Branding is the foundation of the house. It's how you make people feel. It's the values behind it. It's every single consumer touch point. You want people to have the same reaction throughout. That's the only way to build longevity. Shared values with your target audience is the only way to create brand advocacy. That's the word of mouth, right? And then brand loyalty. That's the only thing that's going to make them really want to fight for you and like really become hardcore, fans. Um, so shock values, it's like a viral clip, right? I've had friends go viral just for posting. They're not even trying. They just post something that's gone viral, but they didn't get a lot of followers out. I mean, there was nothing there to back it up, right? Um, and fake is really a problem because if you are looking at building long-term success, uh, you will be found out. There's nowhere to hide in what I call the age of the narrative, right? So that's not worth it either to hurt your business like that. So both of those are not worth the risk.
Right. For my kinesiology students, Laura gives great examples using Nike. Because
Mm,
that was very
yeah.
powerful. I really liked how you talked about how they built the following and this devotion, and they're ready. They'll fight for that label. What about, let's go back to the shock, the fake. So how hard is it then to rebrand yourself. You've made a
Oh,
mistake.
rebrand. Oh.
Yeah. Oh, take it away.
So rebrands. Rebrands are always a crapshoot. I mean, that's the best way to say it because you never know what you're going to get on the other end. I can point to a lot of recent really tragic rebrands. Cracker Barrel, uh,
Oh, yeah.
HBO just
Mhm.
did their, and every single instance, what they've done is they forgot the core audience. Okay, they want to do bigger, they want to do mass, they want to scale. HBO actually came out and said, we're more diverse. We want a larger audience now. But they lost their prestige of the home box office brand, right? That's what they had spent so long doing. Um, so, everybody realizes their mistakes after the fact. But I think I use Miley Cyrus as an example of a rebrand.
Yeah.
And again, to show the difficulty of it with her next to all the other Disney stars, right? How many Disney stars have you never heard of before? It's because their brand was actually the Disney brand. They didn't have their own brand, so they had no choice to rebrand into their own selves, right? And either it works or it doesn't. There's really nothing there. But I will say rebrands are super expensive because you have to do triple the work. Um, and so I always, everybody that I'm working with, I'm always trying to help them avoid a rebrand at all costs.
But in your book, you do use Miley because how many times did she rebrand she
Well,
went
she
from,
rebranded with the shock, but
yeah, yeah.
it was because that turned into be who she really was, right? I had a question the other day about Kanye because I mentioned Kanye in the book, and his brand hasn't changed, even though because he has since the very beginning been controversial in his music and the antics, his
Mm-hmm.
lifestyle, everything that he does, everything. And if you were a core consumer then, you are still a core consumer of him now.
That's right, because you use the famous Taylor Swift Kanye example, and I never thought about it that way until I read that you said his people were unfazed because that's who he was
Right,
already. So
right,
while the rest of us were shocked that he came onto the stage,
right.
his followers were like on par.
It's a beautiful clash moment that actually elevated both brands.
Yes, that's what you
It
said. Yeah.
it compounded what they both stood for and their values and their personalities and everything that makes their core audiences love them even more. Yeah.
So this is a tough one, but could you maybe give three examples of like what would be the most your most important three first steps in trying to create a brand?
So, I don't know if I have three, but I will.
Okay.
The way that I did the book is that introspection comes first, and that is 100%. A mistake I see a lot of is people looking too much to see what other people are doing. Again, that's useful for marketing. That's not useful for branding. You're in a branding situation, you're looking just enough to the outside to see where you fit in the marketplace to make sure you're unique and you have differentiators that is going to set you apart. But really, everything in those first phases is introspective because when I'm going through an audit, I am looking at what my clients did 20 years ago. I'm asking their childhood experiences. I'm really trying to figure out the through line between what they have done and been their entire lives, right? And 20 years from now, because again, going back to the Nike swoosh, we're trying to build people into their own Nike brands, right? So Nike doesn't change over time, but we as people, we grow, evolve, we have life experiences, we change values sometimes. I mean, we're thinking, moving people, right? So, how do we find out the core elements of somebody that is not going to change no matter what changes in their lives? Um, and then use those as, those elements, 4 to 5, 4 to 6 tops. Those are the brand pillars, and they have to be used in a cohesion, right? That's why I call it the brand matrix. All of them have to come out in every single thing that you do. So I think that that process is the most important process. And it is so important to do that before marketing is done because you're just going to waste money on the marketing side. So introspection, so competitive research, just enough to glance to make sure you're unique. The introspection of really figuring out what those core identity traits, values, personality pieces are, and then how to put that into a succinct package, I think is necessary to give the strategy to move forward, basically. That is what tells you what to create. All the imagery, what stylist, and in sports, they have to have stylists too. They have to do photo
Absolutely.
shoots too. Like, um, what's that look? What's their website? What all the things comes to play after you've already done that building work behind the scenes.
And I'm going to tag off of that because it's this is a rhetorical question. So in your book, you have the reader stop and fill out lists, right? And create these lists. Again, it's rhetorical because it's pretty clear what you're having us do, but why did that idea come to you? And kind of give a little brief, why lists? Why, if I even think I know what my brand is, why do I need to spend time writing some of this down if it seems so obvious to me?
Because a lot of people can't distinguish between, okay, this is my descriptives on image, this is my descriptives on my personality, my narrative. Like, how would people describe my image versus how would people describe my personality and lifestyle and all of those key traits? And then also, what are the key elements of the product and the service that I'm providing, right? Um, Finding the through areas, the same descriptors that are going to fall in all three of those categories visually is an eye opener to most people. And then that is something that should be a brand pillar. Does that make sense? Um, and then the other thing I wanted to mention too about this whole thing and getting people started and where to start, right? I always use a perfume bottle as an example. If I go to the store and pick up a perfume bottle, yes, I am buying a product. But when I'm talking about a brand, that is just a form of the product. So what I need people to do is really figure out what the chemical composition is that they are selling, right? That is super important. Um, and it can be sold in so many different ways, right? It can be sold like a perfume, for instance, is also an air freshener or a candle.
Mhm.
There's so many different ways that you can sell
Like that.
that specific chemical composition. And so that is something that everybody needs to ask at the very beginning before they try to figure out the rest.
We're gonna wrap this up. I actually didn't plan on this, but I'm listening to you and I realized how brilliant that was when you differentiated brand and marketing. So I'm just gonna ask you one more time, what is the difference between a brand and branding and marketing? I
So,
that you made me realize that's it right there. That's what I want
yeah.
my people to really glom onto.
Yeah, I mean, I think branding is the foundation of the house. Branding dictates all the decisions across the board. It's going to dictate what managers you hire, like especially for athletes, right? Who's your agent? What team are you playing for? Who's your publicist? Like, who's the team? They all have to understand what it is that you're selling, right? And so again, that helps you figure out that. It also helps, like I said, create anything that I'm doing from a marketing perspective. I'm going to look back to the brand and I'm going to pull from that. Is there certain terms that need to be used? Is there a voice in the tone, right? What is the voice and the tone of this brand and how does it communicate? That is 100% necessary in today's market. So anyways, yeah, so marketing is what comes after. So branding is the foundation of the house and marketing is what builds the house.
Beautiful. So people listening, I stumbled upon this book, Individual to Empire. Oh, the opening scene with a proposed commercial with Beyonce. I was hooked. Great information all the way through. I happened to notice that she is near me. I tracked her down. And so this is what I know of Laura Bull is that bigwig in the entertainment industry. She went on to then teach others. She wrote this amazing book. She has her own company. So in my mind, this is who Laura Bull is. Not to mention, so gracious that you're willing to do this for other students, which I love. But what I'm wondering is, if I were to ask you, what is the Laura Bull brand?
Oh,
And we'll go out with that.
that's
That's a great
so
way to
funny.
go
I
out.
hate that question.
I know, I'm sorry. But I
Because
know
it is hard to self-brand, right? And that's
right.
why I wrote the book. But I will say that the pillars of my brand are, first off, my purpose is that I am always trying to help other people's dreams come true. So that's why I keep teaching. That's why I was at a record label, because from the very beginning, that's why I wrote the book. I'm always trying to be the one in the background helping other people live out their dreams. So that's the baseline. But then also, I'm very direct. I'm honest to a fault. I will tell you how it is. I hope that comes across in the book. People say that I'm their confidant and their friend. I mean, that is who I am. So, anyways, that's basically my brand.
Beautiful. Laura, thank you so much. We're going to make sure that we put an image up on of the book, but really and truly, that's why I wanted everyone to know. I didn't just get her because she wrote this book. I found the book before I found her, loved it. It's marked up and highlighted and earmarked throughout. And so I highly recommend this book. And again, Laura, thank you.
Thank you for having me.